Hi, welcome to the Crafts channel. My name's Corinne Brad and I'm here today to show you another quilting technique. It's to make an amazing sashed half hexi quilt so that when you put it together, it's like a plait. So this is a quilt, one that I made earlier. And it looks really complicated and it's really, really easy. So I will show you how simple it is. First of all, cut yourself a cardboard template. Now this is a half hexagon. You can do this quite simply by drawing a circle, and then from the edge of the circle you draw a line through it, measure 60-degree angles. 60 degrees, is that right? 60, 120, 180, 360, yeah, 60-degree angles to make your half hexagon. And then cut out a piece of fabric in line with this half hexagon. Now this template that I've got here does include the seam allowance. You can find the template in the description below. So take your piece of fabric and cut yourself some strips of a bright contrast material. This is just 100% cotton, and I've cut strips that are 2.5 centimetres wide. And line up your strip with the bottom of your half hexagon. What you need to do is, once it's been sewn on, you're going to need to carry on this line here from the half hexagon. So when you do your first strip, give it a good bit of leeway there. I'm just going to pop a pin in that. It's not like me to use pins in things. Pop a pin in that. Lift your sewing machine foot. Pop it under. And I tend to use the sewing machine foot here. I tend to use that as a 5-6mm seam guide, seam allowance guide. And it's worked perfectly well for me. Put a couple of locking stitches in the end. And then just run it down. All the way to the bottom of the half hex, and again lock it. And then if you fold your seam so that it's under the darker side of fabric, it gives a much neater look, especially when you're making it up, because it does mean that then you don't see, especially if you're using like thin lawns in pale colours, you won't see that seam underneath it. And then you just need to trim your sash to the same angle as the shape of the half hexagon. Very simply like this. So there's one. Now once you've done that, you will find that you've got an automatic angle starting on your next piece of fabric. So again, I'll just show you how you do it. Oh. Couple of locking stitches. So all the way along the bottom. And it is important to do locking stitches at the end of each piece that you cut and sew, because especially when you're ironing, if you're like me and you tend to be quite rough with your ironing to make sure everything's really flat, if you haven't locked those stitches in, the seams start coming apart. And once you've assembled this quilt, the last thing you want is a seam right in the middle of it to come apart, because it's a bit of a pain to restitch it. Let's just cut this in the same way. Like so. And then what you do is you piece your hexagons together like a plait. So you'll put one piece on there, one piece on there, and here's some that I made earlier. Plait together like this. So when you piece this right sides together, what you want to do, don't line up this point here with that point there, because your seam allowance is going to come 5mm in from that, and what you'll find is if you do it, it's going to be disjointed. So you need to overlap it slightly. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm overlapping that point so that actually 5mm down from there is where it joins. And again, I'm just going to pop a pin in that because I don't want it to shift as I'm working. Make sure everything's good and flat, and then stitch this sash to that side of your hexagon. So when you unpin it and fold it back, you've still got this nice straight edge here, and you want that nice straight edge. So I'm just in danger of losing my foot pedal there. So that you can then take your next piece and place it on the top. And now what you should find is you have got that overlap that you wanted on the ends. Pin that in the middle. And you don't have to force this through the machine. If you've got a decent machine, you'll find that the feed dogs underneath will allow your fabric to go through in a completely straight line. So that when you unfold this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew these other bits onto here very quickly. So talk amongst yourselves while I'm doing this, and then I'll just show you how to neaten the bottom and stitch it to the top so that you can have a flat edge to your quilt. So as you can see, it's built up that lovely plait design that you would have. And actually, if you wanted to make it look like a plait, just use 3 colours of fabric. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it will really look like a multicolour plait. And then what you want to do is you want to trim up the top and bottom of your quilt so that you can bind it in a straight edge. Your easiest way, oh look, I'm such an idiot because I've done this. I'll have to stitch another bit on there. Bear with me a second. Because the easiest way of doing this, let's pop this, is to make sure that this bit here coincides with this bit here. And I've sewn this in totally the wrong order, so please forgive me because you're going to have 2 bits that are together. It's nothing like being prepared for a video shoot and then realising you've sewn them together in the wrong order. But you get the gist of it. Right, that's better. So when you look at your piece of fabric, you've got the point here, up here, and then you've got this corresponding angle down here. Line it up. And then do the scariest thing of all, which is cut straight through your work. Like this. Ooh. There's always something a little bit scary about cutting straight through your work like that. And then what you want to do, and you just have to be just slightly careful with this bit here, because you're going to need to make sure you've got enough seam allowance to sew that onto that. So you want a slight overlap. Where that seam is there, you want this point here to be about 5 mil away from it. I'm just going to pin it. It is a bit daunting if you can't stand the idea of cutting it off and sewing it, then I'm afraid you either just have to cut it off and waste it, or you have to bind the bottom of your quilt in a zigzag. But this is the best way to do it. But just keep an eye on where that seam is, so you stop stitching before that seam. Which is about there. Don't put pins in your mouth. You can't talk while you've got pins in your mouth. And then you can fold this back along that original seam line there. And with a bit of jiggery pokery, you will find that that fits perfectly in there. Like so. And this is what I mean about keep an eye on the order, because what I've now got is I've got 2 bits of fabric the same up here, which is not as it was intended, but we can't all be perfect. Then all you need to do, quite simply, is to sash the side of your quilt. I won't use those bits, they're too short. And I've used the same width sashing down the sides as I have for going in between each half hexagon. Just line it up. And run it straight down. And the great thing about sashing it is if you find that you are a little bit out on your ends of your half hexagons, the sash will cover up all your mistakes. There you go, and then you can just finger press that. And I find it's easier to finger press all your seams, make it up, and then give it a good old press with a hot steam iron afterwards, just to flatten everything out. But as you can see, even though the edge wasn't perfect on that, that sash has covered it up. Multitude of things they cover up. And then all you do is you create more panels like this and sew them next to each other with a sash in between, so that you have this plait after plait after plait effect. And then I've just very simply quilted this with a 2-ounce quilt wadding, and instead of actually going over like top stitching the quilts, I've just stab quilted it every 3rd point here. You can see on the back here there's just little tiny marks where I've stabbed it together just to hold the quilting and the backing in place. Plain white back, a bit more sashing to bind it, and there you have it. A really effective looking quilt in beautiful colours. So for more information about where to get the template, have a look at the description below. Hope you enjoyed the video and that you'll join us for the new ones that we do, and we will see you again soon. Thank you. If you've been inspired to create, please share your makes with us in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed videos by the Crafts channel, hit the like button. Want to see more of us? Then click subscribe. See you next time.